Well,
All right, how's it going, Ryan? So we're doing our first podcast here where we're going to talk about some Book of Mormon archaeology, and I imagine we're going to get off onto all sorts of awesome topics.
yeah,
Um, for those who haven't tuned into us before, um, let's just give a little bit of background. Anyway, so you did a podcast a while back, right? What was it called again?
yeah. It was called Mormon Theories.
Mormon Theories. That was pretty awesome. I mean, you had quite a few episodes on there, the audio only ones, and they had some YouTube ones, right?
I had one guy who put some of them on YouTube. But yeah, I think they're all audio. They were all audio from. I have the video. I just haven't put them on YouTube or anything yet. So
Right. Yeah, but we have kind of a cool background as far as chatting back and forth over the last couple of years about Book of Mormon archaeology, and I've really enjoyed that because you've got some really amazing insights, and so I'm really excited about kind of collaboration and keeping this podcast kind of going back and forth. I kind of hope that with time we can invite more people on, and really people who kind of know a little bit about Book of Mormon archaeology, right? People have
yeah,
some kind of background in it so that they can really contribute to the conversation, that people can get a bunch from what we're saying.
right.
But just for this episode though, like kind of remind me and anyone who might be watching as far as your background, like kind of where you live and what you do and your background in Mormon archaeology and the church and such.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So my name is Ryan Hinkley. I currently live in Roosevelt, Utah. I'm not from there though. I'm from Woods Cross, Utah. But I moved out here for work, and it was about that time I started getting into researching how like science and the gospel fit together, and I was really into like evolution and the Book of Abraham and stuff like that, and it just kind of it got me started. And so I made a blog. It's called Science is True and the Church is Too. Kind of a silly name, but it's out there still, so you can look it up and find it. I
So
still
were you like a biology major?
No, not at all.
No.
It was chemical engineering,
Oh, really? What school did you go to?
University of Utah.
Okay.
Yeah,
When you were going in there, you just kind of like got into some of the intricacies of like evolution, biology, stuff like that.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what it was. Like I've always liked science growing up and math, and so I chose engineering. And honestly, I was pretty bored during engineering school. Like it didn't excite me, But like as soon
Yeah,
as I got out, I started looking into like more into evolution and stuff, and so it kind of took me down that path, just as like
yeah,
an intellectual pursuit.
yeah. Like there's some serious tension there growing up in the church and kind of learning about evolution and stuff, like the tension between the religious narrative and the scientific narrative. Same story for me. I don't know if you knew, I actually went to engineering as well. Like I started in kind of geotechnical engineering, took a bunch of engineering classes, and
Oh, nice.
oh
Yeah.
man, I tell you, after I took like I think it was strength of materials and linear algebra, and what is the other big fat math class that make you take that was just insanely difficult. I mean, so much harder on Calc 3.
Oh yeah, it was like starts with a P or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. And
I
it was
remember that.
like, I don't know if I want to be an engineer anymore.
Partial differential equations
There
was
you
the
go. Yep,
yeah,
differential equations.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah, same story here. And I went to BYU, and so they really hit home on trying to like harmonize, science and scripture, old Earth, young Earth, evolution, special creation. And I mean, to begin with, I was having none of it. I was I was totally open to wherever the truth led me, but I didn't believe a word they said. It's like you better
yeah,
prove every single thing to me because I am not going to take anything at face value. I
yeah,
want I want proof of every single step along the way of evolution, every step along the way of fermentarianism and geologic methods.
yeah,
So
yeah.
so
That's
you
cool.
grew, so did you were you like kind of born and raised in Woodcross?
Yeah, yeah. I was born and raised. You've probably been there before, right?
Yeah, I mean I lived in Bountiful for like
Oh,
6 years. So
nice.
totally
Yeah,
my neck of the woods. Yeah, before we moved down. I mean, I'm from St. George.
mm.
Um, but yeah, we lived up there for quite some time before we moved back down here to Southern Utah. How do you like the Uinta Basin versus Salt Lake Valley?
Um, yeah. There's some things that like it's hard to get stuff, because there's like no stores out here, so that's kind of rough.
Like Vernal is
Yeah,
your closest Walmart.
yeah. Vernal. Yep, 30 miles or 30 minutes away is the closest
Yeah,
Walmart, and the closest Costco is 2 hours away. So yeah, it's we for that reason, it's kind of rough, and we're far away from family. But we like how like chill it is here, and it's just not busy at all. There's like no anxiety. There's no I-15. It's just like
Yeah.
it's really nice. So
Yeah. As long as there's not an inversion and it's not January, you're sitting pretty out there.
yeah, we get some pretty gnarly winters here sometimes. So
Yeah, pretty wicked. Well, I'm gonna have to come visit you sometime because the geology up there. I've been studying. So there's this thing called the Bishop Conglomerate, which is on this erosional surface up there that is anyway, it's spectacular. You've got this mid Oligocene erosional surface that comes off the Uintas right above Vernal, and even just all the way from Duchesne Canyon on the south slope of the Uintas to Vernal. But the geology is like so amazing, and it's such an important part of the geologic history when you're trying to kind of piece things together and compare it to um, I mean, to try and make a case, for or against young old Earth,
mm,
because that erosional surface, um, man, it's wild. It's like a snapshot in time, and I have a lot of really crazy ideas about it. But anyway, I'll tell you about it sometime when we go up there. In fact,
sweet. Yeah,
maybe we'll do an episode on it because it's pretty cool.
yeah. You're welcome anytime, man.
I totally have to do it. Sweet. Okay. Well, yeah. Let's maybe hop in to the Book of Mormon archaeology and how we met. I mean, you kind of I can't remember, like, how did you even find me as far as what was it? Was my geology stuff or my just straight? Oh, it was on the Facebook group, wasn't it?
No, yeah, it was your website actually.
Oh, it was.
Yeah, so I was writing. It was like late 2020, and I just formed this theory, and it's probably totally wrong, but it was a theory about the Jaredites coming from Göbekli Tepe. And I
Right.
found your website saying that like the Jaredites were dating to 14,000 years ago or something like that, which was like the oldest that I'd ever found. And I was kind of leaning towards that way as well. And so I reached out to you. Like I linked your website on my post and my blog post. And then I reached out to you to see if you could do an interview because I've started this podcast too, the Mormon Theories podcast. So that's how we met. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We'll have to go into that on one of these episodes. Because
Yeah, for
Göbekli
sure.
Tepe, I mean, that is a wild site.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy. It's insane that that it dates so old, and I mean it matches same age as Jericho and all those pre-pottery A or whatever sites that range all the way from Turkey to Israel. But
Mhm.
I've always just been like thought it was so crazy how similar it is to Menorca, like the sites on the island of Menorca. I mean, they're like identical, but yet they're
Really?
separated by 7,000 years, radiocarbon years. There's something up there. So we totally have to do a whole episode about that sometime.
Yeah, for sure. And I need to understand better the whole radiocarbon stuff. And I know you've said before that Göbekli Tepe is buried under a bunch of limestone, which seems to skew the dates, make them look older. So I'm
It
definitely
can, it can anyway. And I'm open. It could be awesome if it was that old.
yeah.
Um, but man, it's how do you explain its similarities to things that date so much older? So I think that's an important one to look at it both ways. So let's go through the whole Book of Mormon narrative, and we won't confuse people with that. We'll do our own episode. People can research that themselves.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so I think I'm going to point people to some of my other episodes for a general overview and just kind of assume that people have that they kind of understand the general overview of my model. So, but as far as you, like, you were leaning toward a heartland, is that right? Before you kind of came across my stuff?
No, so that was and I admit like kind of coming from the science side, like the evolution side, I was coming across things that kind of painted the heartland in more of like a creationist light. So I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
I don't know. Like,
Right, right.
um,
That's a big deal though too, because it's almost like there's a divide in the church because academics almost universally favor the Mesoamerican models,
yeah,
whereas more non-academics who don't really care so much about the radiocarbon dating or the specifics of exact locations of the Book of Mormon, and just really kind of go with like their heart and the general idea that the two Cumorah theory seems a little historically not aligned with what the prophets have said. They go with the heartland. But yeah, that makes sense. So you were a mezzo guy, right?
Yeah, and like I was, I was actually I kind of called myself an agnostic. Like I wasn't really strong on the mezzo either, because the little bit that I did look into it, I was not super impressed. But it just seemed like it was more likely because they would find all those ruins, and I was in Facebook groups and watching videos, from the Book of Mormon Central and stuff like that. So it seemed more likely to me, but I wasn't into it really too much.
Right. Not married to either one.
Right. Yeah. And like, the Heartland, from the little I did look into it, they had good points too. Like, the promised land stuff and, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
The prophecy is like, yeah, that
yeah,
a great nation will rise and that the US is aligned with the promised land and all that.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah, I wouldn't put myself in either camp.
Yeah. So
Or,
I mean, was Book of Mormon geography something that you were interested in, even like pre-mission, or got it on your mission, or just totally something more recent?
let's see, on my mission, I wasn't really into it. I was kind of more into like, uh, last day stuff on my mission, to be honest. I went to Brazil. So I kind of felt like it was like kind of far out from Book of Mormon lands anyway.
Yeah.
Although
What part of Brazil?
you find someone who thinks it was in Brazil, like
Yeah, especially once you get to people who think the entire landscape has changed and the ocean used to come into
yeah,
the eastern part of the Andes, and yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I didn't really get into it until recently. It's been the last couple of years, and in fact, on my podcast, I interviewed someone who talked about actually two people who talked about the South American model, and they had some good points too. And I was like, well, I don't know, maybe, yes,
Yeah, there's cool stuff in South America for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, the Andes are awesome. Remind me to tell you sometime about what the Law of One. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that to you, but it's just wild channel text, the Law of One. Um, it's got some stuff that's pretty out there that I don't really agree with, but just really amazing insight too. Like
Yeah.
I don't think it should be totally dismissed because it's got some spectacular insight. But it has this section that talks about like how there's like this heavenly group that was working with the South American people and has been ever since they started working with the Egyptians. Um, which I buy. I mean, there's definitely something very you can't discount the similarities between the megalithic stones up and around Cuzco and the Egyptian megaliths. They're just like that incredible, tight-fitting, massive rock work. You don't see anything like that in Mesoamerica. You don't see anything like that in North America. You,
Yeah,
you only see it in Egypt and maybe a couple parts of Sardinia, Crete, Eurasia. Super interesting.
that is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So how about tell me some more things? So you teach, right? And so you kind of enjoy that, I'm guessing. Um,
I'm not. Yeah, I was a teacher when we first met. I'm not anymore, but I still live out here. Yeah, so I work in the oil field industry now. It's kind of big out here, and I work in a lab, so I'll
so,
test.
so you're like right up my alley, huh?
Kind of like
You
I
should
don't
be an
do much
aspiring
geology.
geology.
It's kind of over my head, the whole geology stuff. I was trying to remember yesterday, like the three types of rocks. Like sedimentary, igneous, and I couldn't remember the other one.
What? Metamor
Metamorphic. How do you say it?
Metamorphic.
Metamorphic. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, should it really have its own rock type? It's like a blend of the other two. Sometimes I think that it doesn't even deserve its own rock type. That's
So isn't that the kind where it's like pressure that makes it, or like
Yeah, I mean, it's basically just any rock that's been compositionally changed. So whether you have an
okay,
igneous rock or a sedimentary rock, you put it up under enough heat or pressure, either one, and it just completely changes composition. Then, so it's your gneisses, your schists, your gabbros, even.
mhm.
Yeah, but anyway, that's funny. The three rock types. Yeah, but that's kind of cool. You got a ton of oil out there in the Unibate. That's another thing. When I come up
Yeah,
there, we'll have to talk about some of the oil fields.
yeah, it's pretty big out here. So
Yeah, and hopefully it'll just get bigger as soon as the oil prices skyrocket again.
yeah,
They start having to dig into the oil shales again.
yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, tell me too. So we're gonna go, and this episode we're just gonna mainly do background information, I think, more than anything. But what other things like interest you the most besides the Book of Mormon archaeology? And I guess the prophecy, if you're still into that for your mission.
Yeah, I'm definitely still into the prophecy stuff. Yeah, so just the Book of Mormon in general has interested me. Like I got into it's like a deep dive into ether, and I was trying to like show that maybe Venus was part of the last parts of the ether and stuff. And you and I have talked a little bit about that. And so that kind of even going into that, I started thinking like more about your model and saying like, well, it does kind of sound like the Jaredites were, at least parts of it were in North America. Um,
Sure.
and so that kind of got me thinking more about your model and into that kind of thought that like, okay, maybe, like the question, where did the Book of Mormon take place, just isn't a good enough question in my mind. Because like, which city are you talking about? Like are you talking about the land of Nephi? Are you talking about where Ether was? Like, it's just, they don't necessarily have to be in the same place, and they could be very far apart. And it's just, so that's kind of opened me up to that. But yeah, like mostly, yeah, I'm just really into like gospel study, last days, Book of Mormon stuff. The Book of Mormon has just fascinated me in the last 3 years. And so, yeah, I go into rabbit holes like none other as far as the Book of Mormon goes. But yeah.
Yeah, your ether stuff really is awesome. Like every time you would text me about those things and I read some of your articles, I'm like, wow, this like I would have never gone down that road.
Yeah.
Like the corresponding the numerology with the Venus cycles and the Venus numerology corresponding with like the little intricacies in the Book of Mormon story. I would have never. I'm just not. My mind it's not there at all. And those are
Yeah.
super insightful. We definitely need to like talk about that sometime and like have you kind of go through every one of those kind of numbers.
Yeah. I'd love to. I'd love to. It's fascinating. And like, I don't know, like, cause I have it in my head, but like, I couldn't get a good way to like present it. So I have articles on my blog, but it's kind of clunky and you have to like read 12 articles for it to make sense. And it's just, so I got to figure that out somehow. But yeah.
Yeah, organize and try and get them more succinct. And because
Yeah.
you had things like within it's not like the Book of Ether is long or even gives a lot of numbers, but the few that it did, it's surprising that they had kind of numbers that had to deal with eight, right? The eights
Yeah.
that fit so well into the Venus cycle that we'll have to talk about sometime.
Yeah.
I
And
I
just,
had go ahead.
no, I was just going to say as a teaser, like the final battle of the Jaredites is 8 days long. And that is very important when it comes to the Venus cycle. And so that's kind of where it started for me. And like, I just kept looking and kept finding stuff. And so anyway, yeah, let's talk about it sometime for sure.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, even that Law of One that I was talking about, it mentions eights quite a bit.
Oh, really?
And how important it is because it's like so everything's in sets of seven, right, in the Bible and in
Mm-hmm.
Israel's numerology, but eight is the beginning of the next cycle, and so eight
Right.
is almost just as important as seven. In the same way that like the Jubilee is on the 50th year, even though it's 49, the seven times seven ends at 49. The first year of the next cycle is the Jubilee. It is the celebration,
Yeah.
and that often is important in all of their cycles. It's like the first day of the next cycle is just as important as the last year of the cycle. Like eight's a pretty big deal. I think that Venus, I haven't really gotten into um, the eclipses, like lunar eclipses and Venus cycles, until I started to get into prophecy. But
Mm-hmm.
when I started trying to pick apart why they were picking, so Daniel's 490 years, right? Daniel 9, when he's talking about seven times seven and why he would break it into seven and 80, 83, and one. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. But the more I kind of got into that, the more it's like, yeah, this is all based around astronomy. Like this is definitely astronomy. The idea, even that he'd pick the 490 years in the first place. It's like every 490 years, you get like these real repeating patterns, lunar patterns, where you have sets of eclipses that happen right near each other,
Oh,
right?
really?
Because the moon it like is on an angle. So instead
Yeah.
of being just straight between the moon and the sun all the time, the Earth is on an angle, and then the moon kind of like circles going and down, up and down. And so for years on years and years, the moon will be above the sun, below the sun, above the sun, below the sun, and just kind of like skirt in front of it. But then every 500 years or so, you've got this period where it's just like kind of like lines up, and you have tons of eclipses just happening right in a row.
Oh dang.
Let's see.
So when's the next?
Like now, right
Right now.
now, yeah, right now it's happening. Like all these eclipses we've been having is because we're on that cycle. The last time this happened was like in the 1600s.
Oh dang. Wow. Yeah. I mean the two American eclipses and all that, like I've looked into that a bunch, but I haven't looked too much into the lunar eclipses and yeah,
Yeah,
that's
they
fascinating.
happen together, and there's going to be some happening in Israel and in Mecca, um, in this 30-year period.
Right.
If you haven't seen, like I just did some um, things with Zion Media, a couple of episodes on prophecy with Zion Media,
Yeah.
but I went
I
into
watched
some
them.
of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. The Book of Catherine one.
Dude, yeah. I love that book. It's awesome.
Oh man, I read that thing like pretty much every day a little bit because I
Yeah,
think about it so much with this Israeli conflict. Um, but man, yeah, we'll talk about that more.
for sure. Yeah, I love that. I read it probably the last year or so. I read it, and a lot of it was over my head, but I should definitely read it again.
Yeah, I'm going through now and trying to. I remember that when I first read it, and for people who don't really know it, the Book of Catherine, you have to see it on my site, on the Gathering One site. Um, this Israeli prophet. Um, he's just got so many illusions of so many things, and it's funny as I reflect on like the first time I read it and how much of it just like went over my head because I have no idea what biblical illusions it's making. Right, like all these places that I'd never even heard of, like Heshbon. Where the heck's Heshbon? What does that have to do with? Why is it saying it over and over again? Why is it talking about this city or that city?
Yeah,
But then you get in every one of those and you're like, okay, well let me go to the work, read, look up in the Bible this city, find out what happened there, find out what the illusions are that he's making, and then it's like, holy cow, this guy is like brilliant. If this isn't inspired, the guy is. How would you do this? The guy just knows. He's a boss. He knows every single part of the Bible and weaves it together in such an amazing way.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I've noticed that too. It's crazy.
yeah. Just today, I was reading a part in it, right, where he's really clear. It's the section where he asks, well, what shall I say when the elders of Israel ask me if I've really prophesied in the name of the Lord, or if I'm fake, essentially.
Hmm.
And he's like, well, tell him this, and it's that whole thing where he's like, see the geese walk, they part before the greater force. But the big thing he says is, he's like, well, what I'm going to say will come to pass. And what is the big thing he says? The 70 years more of captivity. And I've read that so many times, but like it just really hit home today. Like it blew me away because I've been watching so many podcasts on Israel and on this conflict. Like the idea that Israel would get conquered and be captive for another 70 years before the temple is built, before it really gets to be free and becomes a leader of the world. Like that's just not on anyone's radar.
Right.
It really is like the most completely new, like unbelievable. I can't even believe it. Like
Yeah.
that's today. That's what I was thinking. I'm like, I can't believe that. It just doesn't. It's so far off the radar. So then, if it happens, like it makes sense that that would be the number one thing that the Lord's saying. Like, yeah, tell him this. I'm prophesying this because it's not on anyone's radar. Like the
Yeah.
Battle of Gog and Magog that it talks about in there, and all that's on everybody's radar. Like that's nothing special. Like everybody's like, yeah, the Battle of Gog is about to happen. Syria and Hezbollah is about to attack from the north. Even though you didn't hear about that too much 15 years ago when it was first given, it's on everybody's radar today.
Yeah.
But nobody is like, oh yeah, they're gonna get completely conquered. And not only that, it doesn't say by Iran. It says by the coalition of Syria, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, and Jordan. Which even still, I can't believe. It's just it's too far out there right now. So
Yeah.
anyway, if it
And I
happens,
don't understand. I don't understand all those geopolitical stuff too much, but I think what you said on Zion Media like really hit home for me, like the comparison between the Great Disappointment. Is that what it's called? The Great
yeah,
Disappointment
yeah,
and what's to come. Like because coming across Ben Catherine and talking to you, 3 years ago, whenever it was, that I definitely had to change my paradigm because I was thinking like, oh yeah, 2034, like everything's gonna be destroyed and dandy by then. But
I'll go down.
yeah, like
Yeah, head to the
but then
hills.
this way it makes so much more sense. Like it's actually more natural and it just seems okay. Like that would probably be something that would happen just to throw our expectations out the window, because God does that so many times.
Yeah, like every time.
Every time. Yeah, every time.
Yeah, everyone always thinks, "Oh, we know it's going to go down and it's going to be like this," and then it happens, and only the really wise see it and believe it. Anyway,
Yeah.
maybe you need to be on the team that we head to Israel when all this stuff goes down and try and find him and watch the
I would love
miracles.
that. I've been there before.
Oh, have you? You've been there?
Yeah, I went there in 2009. No, 2010. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm
So
jealous.
yeah, I had no idea about Ben Catherine, man. If I had known, I would have looked for him.
I I wouldn't even know where to look. It's gonna be
Yeah.
fun. I'm pretty sure that I don't know. I actually have a lot of faith that uh, something's gonna something actually really supernatural is gonna happen to lead me to find him.
Yeah.
We'll see, but that'll be
That's crazy.
awesome. Let's see. Um, yeah, so trying to think what else we want to go over here where we chime off.
Yeah, it
And,
looks like we
and
got 4 minutes left. So
yeah, but in our next one, I think that what I'd really love to start out with is I'm going to do an episode on Zion Media on this too, but I really want to go through kind of in detail some of the scriptures on the internal model because I've been thinking a lot about this, and in particular, I want to really hit home the East Coast cities and the wars that happen on those East Coast cities, right? So that's Moroni, Nephi, all the way up to Bountiful.
okay.
So the string of 6 cities, and then the war, you know, with the Malachi. And I think that's important. Like so, and then switching before that one and going to the southern coast cities and just going through Alma 51, 53, Route 2, 53, especially where um, Moroni is creating the new border, and some of the wars that stretch all the way from the West Sea to Manti, and then mention they're heading over to Nephi, because I want to try and like actually apply those to real models. I want to apply that to the Heartland model. I want to apply that to the Greek Holocaust and the Mesoamerican models, and just kind of show how difficult it is to make them work.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So maybe we can go over that and have that be kind of our main one.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Awesome. Yeah, well, maybe, and you can let me know if there's any other things that you want to chat about, and I will post this, and we'll see if I'm sure in the beginning episodes here, most people are going to be watching me on Zion Media, but if anyone does find me here, maybe they can leave some comments on things that they're curious about hearing more about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I just gotta say your Zion Media episodes are awesome, man. I have watched all of them, and I actually subscribed and did the whole bell thing so I could find them.
That's awesome. You know, those guys are awesome, and we're going to start doing conferences. We're going to really grow that thing. I think it's heading somewhere. Shane's got the fire. There's a number of people I've already interviewed that have just got the fire. I know that it's going to be pretty spectacular what comes out of that.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. That'd be awesome.
Sweet.
So keep it up.
Well, thanks a ton. Yeah, and I appreciate all your little notes that you sent to me. That you send to me. So keep that up too. Anytime you have an insight.
Yeah, no, like looking in, because sorry, we have just a minute left, but looking into, so I've been looking a lot at, I've been looking at Land of Shalom and Lehi Nephi and like the whole Zenith story, and just looking at that has opened up like a ton of other areas that I'm thinking about, and so some of them may not be exactly what you're thinking either. So like you were saying, we might have to
Battle some things out. But
exactly,
but
yeah.
no, your insights have been spectacular. I'm
Oh,
excited
thanks.
to go over them. They're just awesome. You're
Yeah,
super smart in that stuff, so that's gonna be fun. All right,
thanks.
cool, man. Yeah, I'm excited to kind of do this periodically, kind of churn these out, and really flesh out the specifics of this model and kind of get it introduced to the world finally.
Yeah, me too. I think this is good. I think this will be really good to do that. So thank
Sweet,
you.
sweet. All right, yeah, thank you. I'm gonna push stop here. We'll sign off, and I hope people will come back and kind of chime in to hear more.
Yeah.
All right, sweet man. Well, have a good night.
Okay. Thanks. You too.
All right, later.
Bye.